Good afternoon, everyone. As Matt said, I'm Ursheet Parikh. With me here is Brad Kern. Brad's the VP of Corporate Development at BMC Software. So going to talk about just what BMC Software's IT division has done with the product. I definitely appreciate Matt taking the edge off the session in that I'd say the harder session. I wonder which is the harder one, the one before beer or the one after lunch. But anyway, so hopefully he's on you all back in the groove. What we'll do is I'll introduce StorSimple. I'll do a very short overview of what our solution does in terms of what applications and use cases customers use it for, what is the core sort of proposition, and then rather than kind of get into more details, we will talk through BMC Software's IT department. Brad here will kind of give us some sense on what their environment looks like so that you can kind of connect and get a sense on what their challenges were. And he'll talk through the use cases. We'll have a conversation about what their problems were, how we're going to solve them. And then he'll kind of wrap it up, bringing out the broader business perspective of what the technology, specifically in this case, the combination of StorSimple and S3. Somebody at Amazon would kind of call it the S5 solution. This is StorSimple, and S3 is also a simple storage service kind of does for customers. So with that, let me get started. So StorSimple is the leader in what is now an emerging category. It used to be cloud gateways, and analysts have now have basically made a new product category of it, and they call it cloud integrated storage or cloud integrated enterprise storage. Most of the vendors who fall in this category do end up coming from the gateway category, but a lot of these are also traditional sort of enterprise storage vendors. And the fundamental difference between traditional enterprise storage like EMC NetApp versus what StorSimple does is that it's a cloud integration. In a classic storage solution, you can have data that is sitting in one storage array and can only be replicated to storage from the same vendor in another storage array. One of the things that a solution like StorSimple does is actually makes that data portable across your data centers and in the cloud. Now, in this category, we are seen as the de facto leaders in that it is one of the most widely deployed solutions in the marketplace. Most of our customers are Fortune 1000 enterprises, large mid-size enterprises, and government accounts. Many Dow 30 accounts have actually done their first production deployments on the cloud with this solution. As of now, and it has been like this for well over a year, it is the only cloud storage gateway that has been certified as primary storage by both Microsoft and VMware. Storage Magazine announced their Product of the Year awards. And I guess the Oscar for the Album of the Year, similar, I guess. The Storage System Award from Storage Magazine is one of the most coveted ones. And of all the storage products that came out in the market recently, Storage Magazine picked StorSimple as Storage System of the Year. And just a lot of the analysts, the Gartner Group has picked this company so far as a pool vendor in cloud storage, and it is the only sort of cloud storage vendor that they've put on that list. So a lot of this is grounded on customers and what customers have actually shared with other industry analysts, and that's kind of helped their business kind of take off, and partnership with S3 kind of be a big factor in that role. Now, this is what the product does. It basically connects Windows and VMware servers that are sitting in your enterprise data center to S3 in literally less than 10 minutes with no changes to your applications or, for that matter, your management consoles. Just as your existing SAN or NAS system appears like a C drive or an F drive on your Windows or VMware server, StorSimple makes the S3 service appear like the F drive. And when it does that, the core benefits that customers end up getting, and which is what I'll describe in the next couple of slides, how StorSimple delivers on those, is basically customers end up getting an appliance that is consolidating the functions of primary, backup, archive, disaster recovery, and tape elimination into a single device. So typically, as I'll kind of talk in a couple of slides, how when you have data in your enterprise, you almost have a waterfall model where the same data resides on multiple systems in multiple copies. And managing all of that drives a lot of cost and complexity. And so we go ahead and consolidate that into a unified architecture that automatically manages the data across its lifecycle. Then we do Cloud Snapshots, which bring revolutionary speed, simplicity, and reliability from a data protection and disaster recovery perspective. And I think in case of Brad, he'll be able to kind of give you an example of what that meant for their business. And the net result is that customers who have deployed these solutions have repeatedly and consistently reported that they have seen their enterprise storage costs, the TCO, go down by 60 to 80%. So this is not the theoretical stuff, but this is post-deployment, what is it that they have seen. Now, before I get into the details of how the solution works, I wanted to highlight, what are sort of the applications and workloads that we kind of focus on. What you see at the top on that chart over there is a profile of a lot of workloads. Some analysts estimate that about 70 to 80% of the data in your environments kind of fits that model. But basically what you see the red line showing you is that data is growing exponentially. But intuitively, and the reality is that for most of these applications, most of the I/O is happening to a much smaller amount of data, the working set, and that is not necessarily growing as fast, but that is constantly changing and evolving. Now, the way traditional storage models have worked, you run out of space, you buy another tray and another tray and another tray. And when you have to do your backup, you drain your primary storage system to some sort of a disk-based system. And if you're still working with tapes, then very often you're going ahead and once a week or once a month draining that disk-based system to tape. And so you can see how the CapEx and OpEx in the traditional storage model is really a function of your aggregate data. And what StorSimple does is that by leveraging S3, it actually allows you to go ahead and make CapEx and OpEx really track the working set. So which are the applications that fit this this model pretty well? And that's what you see at the bottom on this slide over here. So when you look at archives, all kinds of tier 2, tier 3 sort of archives that you may have, media, engineering, logs, records, check images, all kinds of drawings, legal. So that's a big category. We all have a large, Fortune 50 insurance company, which is basically going ahead and putting a lot of its contracts out that way, where they always have to be online. Some days, some get processed more often than others. It's hard to know exactly what to keep where, and the system kind of figures it out. All kinds of shared drives and file shares. So data which would have normally resided on maybe some sort of a NetApp, user home directories, or just big, big group directories and things like that, that ends up being a big candidate. A lot of the content management and collaboration. So in the pharmaceutical side, had several pharma companies who use a lot of Documentum, and they end up having big records to kind of go ahead and manage. That's where that happens. We have some other large companies who want to keep email in-house, including the archives, but want to have the economics of the cloud, are able to kind of go ahead and leverage a device like this to do that. And then if you're using SharePoint, a lot of the recommendations from Microsoft, which basically builds SharePoint, on how do you scale SharePoint, comes with leveraging a lot of the components that StorSimple delivers. And some of the largest deployments in the world actually run off a StorSimple solution. And finally, the most popular use case is around virtual machines. What we find is that in most of these workloads, the first 5 blocks, customers are beginning to run most of their applications on some sort of virtualization layer. And this is where Windows certification or Linux certification or interoperability is alone not enough. You have to kind of have a lot of the VMware certification as well. And in the context of virtual machines, you have the application data, which for us falls into the first 5 buckets, or you can have the VMs themselves. And there you end up having challenges with regards to the sprawl in the VMs, or when you deploy virtualization in your regional offices and you consolidate 20 or 50 or 100 servers into 2 physical servers running everything else in a virtualized manner, you end up still having to deal with a storage infrastructure in the SAN. So this is the things that we end up doing very well. What you don't see on this list is what I would call big databases. So if you have Oracle ERP or you have SAP, that's not a candidate for running in this kind of a model. Probably some sort of high intensity, high I/O, high frequency trading application is not there. One of the things that this model is very well suited for, and something that we have currently running in private beta, is an ability to do scale-out analytics with on-premise data. So if you have data which is on-premise and you want to be able to go ahead and spin up 100 virtual machines in Amazon EC2 to run analytics off that, we have a solution right now in private beta. You can kind of register for that this evening at the reception at our booth, and that can kind of get you that. So that's what we do, and for this class of applications, this is basically what we end up doing. When you have these virtualized applications, there is a primary SAN or a NAS, right? NetApp, BMC, IBM, HP, Hitachi, Dell, one of those products. Now, very often, you will end up finding that since the data becomes so large, that cost factors or other considerations drive the need to actually manually find data which is not frequently accessed and offload it from a retention or a compliance perspective. So there is often some sort of an archival storage and a software solution over there. Then when starting to do backups, one of the big trends that happened in the past decade was disk-based backup. So you basically have some sort of a EMC data domain, kind of a solution that you end up using for backup. Now, disk-based backup is great, but it still doesn't eliminate tape. Because when you have to move large volumes of data across distances, tape still ends up being a pretty efficient sort of mechanism. And so then every once a week or once a month, a lot of the organizations go ahead and write all that data to tape. Of course, there's a media server running software from companies like Commvault or their competitors, who end up going ahead and having to go ahead and move all of this data. You also then find that the model is not necessarily working out well just for backup from a recovery perspective. Because once you have 50, 100 terabytes of data and you kind of try and do a test to recover the data, it takes a lot of complexity, a lot of time, and a lot of dollars to even test recovery. And customers then start using replication for tier 2, tier 3 applications. The analogy that I use for kind of tier 2, tier 3 application replication is like saying, well, there's 100 million households in the US, and what if, a house is going to burn down? You're asking all the 100 million households to maintain and operate a second house and bear all the full costs for it. That's kind of what the replication-like model means. It's versus what our solution enables for customers is really a cloud-based recovery model where it's either insurance or and that can kind of get you back up and running very quickly. And then, of course, there's the offsite component. So that is what your storage today looks like. And what StorSimple does is the appliance is a cloud-integrated SAN device. It presents itself as a local SAN. It has solid-state drives or flash drives, which actually identifies the most frequently accessed data, creates fingerprints and block ranks, and puts that in SSD so that ends up getting serviced very fast. What it also does is it does deduplication and compression of your data, and also tiers it down to an integrated spinning hard drive tier, so that you can actually have most of the data that's frequently accessed sitting seamlessly locally within this device. Now, what the block rank algorithms in the StorSimple appliance do is they actually go ahead and find out data which is not as frequently accessed, and go ahead and send it out to S3. And so there you end up having this implicit cloud as a tier. So you're not left wondering what you want to keep local or what you want to kind of send out. The model is also designed such that the snapshots that we do are very space optimized. So compared to like a traditional Dell EcoLogic array, these snapshots consume 90% less space. So not uncommon for our customers to keep 100 snapshots around. Then what we also do is Cloud Snapshots. And Cloud Snapshots is basically a snapshot where the data and the underlying metadata kind of resides in the cloud, and it can be recovered in any of your locations or in the cloud in itself. And so what that does for you is that if you have to recover large volumes of data, you don't need to transfer all of that data before your application can come online. These snapshots are application consistent, and applications can just mount and start reading the data, populate the working set, and recover much faster. And we'll share some data with you. And the net result of this is that by driving using Cloud Snapshot to drive portability of the data, you can kind of go ahead and really make the cloud as a secondary data center. And so the net result is essentially you end up reducing a lot of the costs, because you're taking 5 or 6 devices, support, maintenance, management all the time, and consolidating that out into a single device, which does a lot of these things in an automated manner. The biggest fans of our products in a customer's organization are typically the IT management who wants to see consolidation, the storage administrators who basically want to see their life simplified because of the data management. Customers have reported, and storage administrators have reported recovering 12, 14 hours a day because they just didn't have to go and deal with traditional backups. And then, of course, the finance guys because they see the ROI. And so with that kind of overview, and if you have more detailed questions or would like to kind of have follow-up appointments, please check in with our booth in the evening reception. I was now going to go ahead and hand over to Brad to introduce BMC IT and talk about stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. So a little bit about BMC first for the folks that don't know about BMC. Founded in 1980, we're a Houston-based company. We're the 8th largest independent software company, leader in business service management software. Our customers consume our software in both on-prem, off-prem, or hybrid clouds. Talk a little bit about that. 6,000 plus employees operating in over 30 countries. 38 US offices, and I highlight that for the case study on that we're scaling rapidly, and the amount of data we were consuming, it was not going down. Our IT department, Gus and the folks there deliver over 21 distinct business services, managing 18,000 plus virtual servers and over a petabyte of data. So, a little bit about inside business service management. What's important to understand is we have a software called Cloud Lifecycle Management, which creates highly automated, dynamic, self-service virtual environments. So what is that? We automate servers, we automate storage, we automate network, and the self-service implies that we could create, build up, and tear down these images very rapidly. But the images are not always used, but they're often needed. Different points in time during the day, quarter, month, year-end closes. And so not only do our customers consume our CLM software, but we manage our own IT infrastructure that way. So one of the challenges that was immediate was that we had over 13,000 VMware images, and the sprawl was astronomical. We managed over 600 ESX servers. It was already highly automated through our CLM solution, images we needed. The backup window was not big enough at all, and to exacerbate the problem, we were out of data center space. So power and cooling became a major problem as we were starting to look for a solution. Another part of that is the cost of the SAN. So as we start to look out at solutions, SAN was quite expensive, and so we started to look through the solutions. And I've talk right through the solution, and I'll come on back to you.
Okay, all right. So I can describe the solution out for Brad. So basically what BMC's IT software department did is that they realized that out of the 13,000 VM images that they had, there's a small fraction which they kind of classified as their tier 1 images that they prioritized to leverage their existing NetApp filers in EMC SAN for. And they ended up creating a cloud tier. And essentially the way VMware works, it is able to go ahead and based on utilization with vSphere 5, identify the right tier to store the VM images on. And so the net result of it was that, the situation was pretty bad in that they had already started increasing the temperature of their data center. It was running in the 70s, had gone to 80s. So now they're able to go ahead and really make space in their data center by offloading data to S3, leveraging StorSimple. It has deferred the need to build out a new data center. In the process, because of the integrated stack that you see, they also started experiencing the benefits that once you move the VMs to a StorSimple appliance, you end up not having to manage and back them up, and so it has significantly relieved the pressure on their backup windows. Because bulk of the data really ends up kind of getting classified in this model, and it's pretty seamless. And the fact that the solution was VMware ready and VMware certified drove a big factor from a confidence perspective, because I think the IT leader here is one of the 300 VMware V experts in the world.
So Gus, being the savvy guy that he is up in this picture here, realized, I mentioned about the 38 sales offices. One of the challenges that we faced was it's just not about the VMware sprawl, but we had quarter-end closes in the sales data, and we had backup and disaster recovery issues as well. So kind of looked at this, and the key takeaway was it was one appliance that did it all for us. That was really important. So we used Cloud Snapshots to have data available on the DR sites in minutes, right? Rather than the backup and the restore that could take up to 5 days. That was a big key takeaway for us. It allowed us to put all the storage functions in one device, and more important, the remote management of it made it much easier from a capital expenditure and an operational expenditure. And so now we're starting to see the realizations of those operational savings from those remote offices as well. So I'll hand it on over to you to talk through this slide here.
Yeah, sure, Brad. So I think a couple of the other key points about that was that they were able to go ahead and redeploy the SANs that they had in these regional offices back in the data center. At the same time, buying a StorSimple device was 80% less expensive than buying a SAN. So what had happened for them is that they had these regional offices where they had to recover from tape. They had some critical outages where their SLA was to recover in 5 days, and that wasn't good enough. And the only real alternative they had was to buy a second SAN, expand the bandwidth, do a lot more on the replication side. And instead, this is where Cloud Snapshots kind of came to the rescue. And what you see is a chart over here. Many of you are probably thinking about, my first step to the cloud should be backup. You've probably heard of Mozy, Carbonite, a whole bunch of these consumer backup services. And part of the challenge that you end up facing is what is kind of described in this slide. There's a reason why, a lot of the classic traditional cloud backup, practically every backup software that is out there in the market that you're using, traditionally with your disk and tape, also says they can go ahead and do a backup to the cloud. The reason most enterprises are not able to leverage that is really the recovery time. So what you see is the red line is kind of showing you the recovery time. If you had a 100 meg WAN link that was dedicated to a cloud service, what the x-axis over here shows you is a scale up on the data. It's like going from 1 terabyte to 100 terabytes. And then what the y-axis is doing for you is that's actually showing you from a classic storage management recovery time perspective, 15 to sort of 15 minutes to a quarter. And what you end up finding is when the data volumes are small, sub 2, 3, 4 terabytes, you can kind of go ahead and recover from a traditional cloud backup very easily. But the challenge very often will happen when you end up having to go ahead and recover large volumes of data. And that is where you find that, once you start crossing 8 or 10 terabytes, you end up finding that tape is actually faster than any kind of classic cloud backup. And this is where what StorSimple does with Cloud Snapshots ends up being so relevant. By going ahead and keeping all this data backup copies, which are so consistent from a customer's perspective, and from an application consistency perspective, it allows you to go ahead and recover in minutes and hours rather than days. So 100 terabytes can be recovered using Cloud Snapshots in a single appliance within a day. And that's in sharp contrast to anything that's kind of out there. And so with this, before I hand it back over to Brad, I think a couple other things that I kind of go ahead and summarize, something that I kind of highlighted early on, which is essentially it's a consolidated storage stack that allows you to leverage S3 as a seamless extension of your data center. And then once you get your data into S3, what we have in private beta will allow you to go ahead and use S3 tied EC2 compute as a seamless extension. I think if any of your organizations are going to go ahead and buy any traditional storage in the next 6 months, would highly recommend giving us an opportunity to just come and present and doing an ROI analysis, as well as an operational analysis with regards to how much time you'd save. And then, of course, you can kind of go ahead and decide what you want to do after that. So with that, let me hand over to Brad.
Sure. So to sum up, from a customer perspective, BMC Simple, we're a software company. We're focused on building best software around business service management. Our internal IT capabilities are crucial to the credibility to what we do out in the marketplace to our customers. We have to eat our own dog food all the time. So we build and manage these highly complex cloud environments. So this was critical to us to move forward and be cutting edge. We required a storage backup solution that minimized the costs and meet our SLA for our private cloud. And the StorSimple solution actually achieved that to support our business and reduce our cost, reduced our cost tremendously on the CapEx side, from rather than buying traditional SAN, lowering it on the OpEx side, creating a true win-win. And if there was a takeaway, I would say is there's a link down here at the bottom. Go take a look at it. There's a much more detailed, in-depth analysis and video from Gus talking about the solution. So I would go to the website and check that out.